Are there any like tips you can give someone who's like, okay, you know what? I don't have the time or the resources to run multiple tests with that many people. Is there a shorthand version where like, never do this, always do this, and sometimes do this?
Fortunately, there is the UX community is just incredible on LinkedIn. So there are plenty, there is no shortage in templates. We always need to take templates with a bit of grain of salt, because again, it needs to be kind of customized for whatever your needs are, I think. But in general, there is this almost like unwritten rule, and I think that this is something that we often forget. Just take 5 people, 5 users, and speak with them about whatever they're going with. If they encounter any issues, is everything clear? Just try to find any problems, any issues, any pain points that they have. Just 5 people. You don't need a lot of time. I think that very often we think that this is going to take an incredible amount of time. This is going to be extremely expensive. It's going to delay the project. It's going to derail our commitments. Not necessarily. You just bring 5 people in the room, or in a Zoom room. You have a conversation, and you will find incredible insights already. So just start with that. Then, once you have that in mind, what you can do is just, run a couple of, one-on-one usability testing, where you start giving people tasks to see how they're performing those tasks. And as they do, you can bring up your questions and try to figure out what exactly was the issue. But for that, you need to, of course, understand what your environment is, and what your product is, what your service is, and so on, and what things are important. You might want to break it down by different groups of people who are using the service or using the site. Usually, the good layer or good level that you want to achieve is when you have this kind of end-to-end testing. Somebody just lands on the product, they go for onboarding, eventually they have to do some tasks to get things done, and then eventually they maybe upgrade, right? This could be like end-to-end testing. But then if you have, let's say, something very specific that you've been working on last quarter, like search, well, then you go in and you start looking, okay, let me come up with 10, 12 tasks related specifically for search, different types of searches, with filters, without filters, with sorting, without sorting. And then you see if this is working. This doesn't have to take a lot of time. I know 5 people already, you will get incredible insights.
In web especially, maybe with design and branding, it's a little harder to measure, but how do we make it so that we can measure if it's effective, if it's intelligent, if it's efficient or whatever? How do we measure this stuff when it comes to design and UX?
Whenever I'm designing anything, I need to guarantee, even before I start designing a single pixel on the screen, I want to guarantee that it is going to work better than what we have right now. I do not want to waste anybody's time. I do not want to be in a position where I have to get into defensive mode saying, well, we tried our best, but we failed, right? Especially when you're dealing with a large organization or a large company. So for that, what we actually do is, before we even start designing, we think about, okay, let's create this kind of concepts, and we can run some concept testing. Or also, we can also take an existing website and create a baseline or status quo first. So for that, what we do is this. We take a website or product that we have, and then we basically ask ourselves, okay, what are some representative tasks, so-called top tasks that people are going to perform there? So if it's like a banking application, they're probably going to send money to someone. Maybe they're going to withdraw money, or maybe they're going to add money to the bank account. So we create something like 10 to 12 representative tasks, depending on the environment in which we are. And then usually you need at least 15 people, 18 is better, but at least 15. After that, you actually get to the stable results in terms of like statistically reliable data. What you get is you bring 18 people, ideally, and you give them these tasks, all 12 of them, and you spend maybe 1 hour of them. Some of my colleagues do it kind of unmoderated testing where they're not even present. They just send these tasks, and there is basically a tool, there are plenty of tools that can just record it for you, and then they send to you the result of that recording. But I like to be spending the time with that person, not like in a physical room, but usually on Zoom. So I basically give them tasks. I tell them, I'm not going to speak. I'm just going to observe. I'm not going to tell you what to do. We're not testing you. Of course, we're testing the website at this point. Feel free to stop. Feel free to fail. If you fail, I learn from that. That's very valuable. And they go. And what we do is we measure 2 things. First, we measure how much time they need to complete those tasks. And we measure if they're successful with it or not. You get 18 people, right, completing those tasks. You get to the point where you actually get an average time per task, right? For every task, you will get an average time that they need, right? And also get the success rate. Typically, what you will aim to achieve is at least 80% success rate. And then if you actually run it once, and then you run it with a new design 6 months later, right, or 5 months later after rollout, You bring the same segment of people, not the same people, but the same segment of people, 18 people, you give them 12 tasks, you measure time, you measure success rates. And you basically get before and after. And that's a clear indicator that something has either improved or not, right? So because you basically give them not just random tasks, but representative tasks, things that they are kind of critical for that application, for that website. And one thing that I think I really want to emphasize here, usually you get to the point where you ask people, hey, tell us, speak through your experience, right, as you're doing these tasks. But that, of course, delays people because, again, when they start speaking, this doesn't represent the reality. So they need more time to complete tasks, and that's just not what people do in real life. So try to be as realistic as possible. And then you get basically the results. Just in the end, after a person has completed all the tasks, we basically do a debriefing, get some insights, take some notes, and we know what to do next time.
I'm curious, and I'm throwing you a curveball here. In the age of AI, do you see a future where, okay, it could take something that you've done, where you've labeled it a certain way, you've given it certain rules that depending on who shows up, it creates a version of the site just for them. Not just the way it looks, but even the offers and the copy's written differently. So it's hyper-targeted, super narrow niche. What do you think about that?
Well, this is an interesting future we're talking about here. I think, you know what, Chris? I wouldn't mind that at all, as long as people who are coming to that site or using that service or product can get their work done fast, right? And understand what is going on, and it's all clear. I think we can still create experiences that are pretty much accommodating for a vast majority of people. I don't know if we need to go that route to really hyper-customize, hyper-personalize, because at some point you also get to the situation where the system maybe understands the human better than the human does himself or herself. So it becomes a little bit, freaky and a little bit dangerous in a way, right? And I think it might not be necessary at times. What is, however, necessary, I think, is simple, humane things. This is also what I'm missing. I mean, we have conversations about AI, and of course AI is extremely important, and of course this is the future, and of course we need to understand as designers what to do with it, and of course we probably shouldn't be afraid of it, I think. Well, let's see what will be, we'll know in a couple of years, I'm sure. But I also miss humane touch. I mean, I don't know about you, and I don't know about everyone who's going to watch or listen to this later. Sometimes I can smell ChatGPT text. I can just, I don't know, I just feel like there is something ChatGPT-ish in it. It's I cannot point a finger. It's maybe like, the bold, and then you have the text, and then bold, and then you have a bit of text as well. And it's a little bit too perfect, and it's a bit too clean in a way, too sterile in some way. That's not how the world is. The world is messy and complex, and people make mistakes and typos, and I want to see typos. I want to see typos everywhere. I mean, not maybe in formal documents, but I want people to be just respectful and kind, and sometimes forget about things, and sometimes remember things, and sometimes be inconsistent. We do not have to have 100% consistent experiences just for the sake of being consistent. Just make me, I don't know, surprised or smile or worried about that footer that is not aligned. That's okay. That's the web. We can always interact and play and change and experiment.